Welcome to Rebel Executives, the podcast, where everyone has a story about a rebellion. It might be a small risk that ended up shaping the way you do business. Or maybe it's the day you rage quit your job and started an empire. Together with other revolutionaries, we'll learn how to grow your business and avoid costly mistakes. Because let's face it, none of us got it right the first time. Now, let's join the rebellion with our host, Dawn Sizer.
I've been running from 9 to 5, been biting my tongue for all this time, won't let anyone cut me short.
My guest on this episode is Corinne Hancock. She is a globally recognized cultural anthropologist, serial entrepreneur, humanitarian, and mother of teenage boys. She's also a volunteer wildland firefighter and serves the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department as a victim's advocate. Corinne challenges leaders and teams to create a relationship with chaos so it is always an advantage. She is masterful at motivating and bringing together multi-generational, multicultural teams that can thrive in any situation. Corinne truly knows how to use chaos to her advantage and thrive. Welcome, Corinne, and thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Dawn. This is such an honor. I feel really, really honored to be here.
So tell me, funny story for all the folks that are listening. So I originally saw you years ago in Hershey at a Vistage event, and you were talking about chaos. And you were telling me about how you have gone into multiple countries as part of a medical contingent, essentially, and how you handle some of the crazy that goes on when you're going into a completely separate country where you don't speak the language, you have no idea what's going on, essentially, other than you're there to, help out some folks. I mean, how do you deal with the chaos that goes along with that? I mean, that's chaos and crazy all rolled into one.
Well, it is funny, and it's funny story of how we met. And then, multiple times, I think that you've also seen me at channel events speaking in the IT community, being very much that you and I share a very similar chaotic life, but in very different circumstances. And so I think first we have to look at our relationship with chaos. Like, not how do we deal with it? What does it make you actually feel? And maybe look at chaos as this idea of sort of confusion and disorder. I'm not talking about drama. I'm talking about chaos, things being confusing, things not going according to plan, sort of that change that just happens unexpectedly. And so I think we have to really start to, before you evaluate anything of how you work through it, how you use it as an advantage, you have to first identify your own relationship with it. And clearly mine is a little codependent, obviously, as I sort of seem very attracted to that. I work very well in situations like that. I like overcoming challenges. I like the feeling of taking something very disorderly and disorganized and finding the good that comes out of it.
So in my world, in the IT field, we call this change management. So which I think everybody has experienced and we have talked about in some way, shape, or form. But like you said, I mean, we've seen each other in different roles in different spaces and that kind of thing. And from what I've heard from you and the way that we deal with, I'm going to call it change management again, is very, very different in that you are looking to provide order to a situation and we are looking to provide order to either a timeline or people and the way that they experience something. So yes, it's a relationship on how you do that. But how do you go up to a person and say, I know your world is in incredible flux right now, and we're going to make this so much better, and have them actually believe you?
Well, honestly, well, that's good. I think a little bit of my credibility comes from, like you said, is I've spent my whole career as an international aid and development worker, working in the most chaotic environments around the world. So taking things like all of these issues where you're trying to accomplish a mission, you have something that you're actually trying to accomplish, and then things keep changing outside of your control. And when they change outside of your control, it's looking at how quickly can you move from a reaction? Because you are going to have a human response reaction of either avoiding it, wanting to avoid it, wanting to blame others for it, wanting to complain about it, just that reactive sort of chaotic state. Nothing gets done in that avoiding, blaming, or complaining. And we're wanting to move it into a response. How do we move into actually the solving mode instead of getting stuck in why the problem's happening? How do we, in this moment, blame so and so? Yes, all of that needs to be figured out and analyzed so that we don't keep making the same mistakes again. But in the moment of that crisis, of that unexpected event, we have to look at how can we move ourselves from the reaction to the response. Because I believe that the chaos sort of exists in the middle there. The chaos exists when you stay in the avoiding, blaming, and complaining. So I think people come to me to talk about that and say, well, okay, I get that. Help me move faster into the response then. Help me move out of the avoiding, blaming, and complaining. But that's really difficult. I mean, that's a really difficult sort of place to start and think about. But I think even becoming aware that that's what's happening when unexpected events occur, or even sort of ones that maybe we're expecting, but they're still frustrating. We still have to get ourselves out of the reaction and into the response.
So in kind of an ironic, funny, not a funny, a little bit funny. So I've heard the, avoidance, blame and complain multiple times from you. And it's kind of funny, you have a phone call come in and I literally share that response of, oh, I know what's coming. I don't want to pick up that phone.
Right. I always use the joke of like any of us who are parents, I have 2 teenage boys and that's enough chaos in itself. But when they were younger, and I think any parent can relate to this, when you see that school phone number pop up on your phone,
right,
it gives you that automatic dread. Because I don't know about you all, but for me, they were never calling me saying, hey, Corinne, we're just calling to let you know Chase is having a great day. I mean, that is never, ever the phone call you're getting. You're about to deal with a crisis. You know it's coming and you want to like almost avoid it or blame someone or complain about it in that moment. But it doesn't solve it. You still got to take the call. You still got to deal with the issue at hand.
You do. And like you said, that whole moving through it very quickly is the way to go about doing it. Because like I said, I've had those phone calls. I get them every day in some way, shape, or form. Like, oh, yep, I know exactly what's going on before I even pick up that phone. I know whose fault it is. It might be mine. It could be that scenario. And then it's, well, how do I not just sit here and whine about it for 20 minutes? And sometimes you have to do that because it's part of the management, the venting part of it. Sure. And that's understandable. It is part of the change management of getting it out of your system so that you can move on and deal with it. I mean, do you find that some people tend to spiral and then other people go through it very quickly?
Yes, for sure. And I think it's more people that, like I said, at first, even acknowledging what chaos makes you feel. Like, is it an environment that you feel really uncomfortable in? Do you hate when things change outside of your control? Is it something that makes you really uncomfortable? Or is it something that like someone like me, or maybe you, sees as a challenge to overcome? It's sort of exciting. It's not that we always love it, but we all have a different relationship. So you have to first absolutely recognize what your own relationship is. There's no right or wrong in it, but the more that you understand how it's going to come at you, how it's going to make you feel, then you have a starting place to work from. Because the goal is that you always want to refocus on the mission. What are you actually trying to accomplish? So when I'm overseas in these chaotic environments where nothing is ever going as planned, we just always keep coming back to the mission. What are we actually here to do? What are we trying to accomplish in this moment, in this week, in this, project? What's the really big outcome? And then how can we keep breaking it down to accomplish it, step by step? And so it's being very, in the agile world, it is being very agile and being able to fluctuate. But yes, there's some people that feel more comfortable in it, and some that are very uncomfortable in it. But I think it's something that you can learn to be more comfortable in if you kind of recognize that this is how I feel when things change outside my control. What am I actually trying to accomplish? What's the worst that can happen? What am I actually afraid of right now? And so it's kind of getting into yourself in that moment and understanding, like, this isn't the end of the world. This is hard and this sucks. And there is going to be some impact that doesn't feel good, but there is a way through if I refocus on the mission.
And for those of you that deal with projects all day, every day, there's always, in that group of folks that you're working with, there's always that one person that's in that horrific spiral. Everything,
Yes.
the world is ending, everything's bad, nothing could possibly ever go wrong sort of scenario. And the IT world, I know a lot of people think it's all about the stuff, right? It's all about the IT, it's all about the gadgets, the gizmos, that kind of stuff. But it's really not. It's all about the people.
Yep.
And for us, change management isn't about doing the project. It's about fixing the people first to make sure that they can handle the change management that's coming. And you always know how well you've done in the prep for the project by whether the entire group of people is spiraling or you just have one. And there's always going to be one. And there's only so much that you can do. But then being able to go back to them and say, hey, I know you're uncomfortable. Do you know what's making you uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can pinpoint that, we can work on that one thing
Right.
and get you over the hump. So for those of you that have done projects, I know you're going, oh, that was Bob. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Totally,
Right?
totally. And I can give you guys a little trick right now, a little hint on how to manage and deal with, whether it's yourself or those that are spiraling out of control in that moment or kind of getting stuck in the avoiding, blaming, and complaining. The reason why that's happening. So I'm a cultural anthropologist by trade. I study human behavior. I study how people react, especially in high conflict zones, and how we move them forward. And so what I want people to understand is that our whole entire goal as human beings, this sounds crazy, but deep, deep down is that we want to feel safe. Human beings want to feel safe emotionally, physically, environmentally, everything, psychologically. We want to feel safe. And if you think about right now, what's happening in the world, what's happening all around us, there's so much insecurity around all of those factors. It could just be one, it could be a multitude of ones for people, but people are insecure. And when people are insecure, they have a lack of clarity. And so it makes them feel unsafe. So when you have no clarity, you do not feel safe. And when you don't feel safe, what are you going to do? You're going to either blame someone, you're going to complain about it, you're going to avoid it, because in that moment, that gives you a sense of clarity. As crazy as that sounds, but if a project is going wrong and I can blame you, Dawn, for, the process or the unrealistic timeline, that gives me a micro bit of clarity that makes me feel safe in that moment because I can just blame you. And now it doesn't move the project forward. It doesn't accomplish anything, but it does make me feel safe. So if you or anyone around you is sort of feeling like they're in that out of control or spiraling or just not getting the project moving forward or anything, it's asking yourself, do they feel safe right now? Do they have clarity? There must be a lack of clarity somewhere that is making them feel unsafe, that is getting them stuck there. So that is my biggest sort of tip that I say to myself, that I say to others when time I see or feel anyone not moving forward, is asking that question, like, what are you worried about? What's happening right now that's, and you don't want to necessarily use the word safe, but know in the back of your mind that there's a lack of clarity that is making people feel unsafe.
I like that you use the word clarity instead of fear.
Totally.
Because it is different.
It's totally different.
So that's something
totally different, because fear is very different for different people, and it really depends on your life experiences. I will be dead honest now in my life and the experiences that I've had in so many very chaotic scenes around the world and working in war zones and very chaotic places. I work also on the police department as a victim advocate. And so fear, there isn't much that I'm actually afraid of. It's going to be a lot to scare me or use fear as a barometer. That's why I like to use clarity, like, is there clarity for people that are making people feel safe? Because you don't know what people are experiencing unless you ask them. What are they actually worried about right now? Maybe it doesn't even have anything to do with what you think. We all have different experiences and perspectives of the same situation.
Absolutely. And you can never assume, because it just might be that they're having a bad day.
Right. You have no idea. Maybe they just got the school phone call.
That could be. That is for sure. So let's shift gears just a little bit and let's talk about the chaos of people, because we've talked about the chaos of the situation, right? And then, of course, I'm going to call out Bob again because it's my favorite word to use. But there's always one person that causes chaos for whatever reason. Like, how do you deal with that one person that no matter what they do, how they do it, where they're at, you can put them in different teams. It just doesn't matter. Chaos follows them wherever they go. How do you deal with that level of crazy that surrounds that person?
One is that I would challenge that sometimes, like I said, there's two main factors with human beings. We want to feel safe and we want to feel valuable. So I would think that Bob, I would be checking in to see, why doesn't Bob feel like he's bringing value? Because he may think he's bringing value by bringing the chaos, right? Sometimes by bringing complaints, by always challenging every process, by being the sort of troublemaker of the team. Does he think he's being valuable? And can you find a different way to help him feel valuable? And does he have clarity? Is he clear on really what the mission is? What's the expectation? What is the role in this moment? And I believe that anytime people are overwhelmed or chaotic, everything is just sort of too big. The mission's too big. Maybe the expectations are too big. You just have to pull it in to this moment, get them into the here and now. And you can still be focused on all the big stuff out here, but get Bob into this moment right here. And I find that helps the spinning, because if you can pull him into right here, right now, hey, what's the clarity? Like, what are we actually trying to accomplish? By when? Who's doing what? Get real specifics on the clarity, and then help him see the value that he's bringing to it. I find that to be an incredible way to manage it. It's almost the same as dealing with a young child that's having a temper tantrum, right? It's getting them to come into the moment. What are they actually worried about? What are they actually upset about in that moment? And what do they need to move forward to feel valuable and like they're contributing to the world?
So to put this in context, where I see that a lot is in committees,
Yes.
right? And boards. So
Yes.
You always have Bob who's on one of those things and they continually interject or whatever. And that's how scaling down what you're looking for to make sure that they're adding value in an appropriate manner.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just the spray and pray, right?
Totally. Well, and it's really trying to observe your own reaction to Bob, right? Like, because think about what is our default sort of reaction. If Bob's someone I'm imagining, because I've seen a few of them,
right?
That is the challenger, right? Everything that you bring up, they're gonna tell you why that can't happen or what's wrong with this project, instead of all the things that could be good about it. They're more focused on proving you wrong, or almost proving the project wrong, or proving why this can't happen. But really, if you think about it, and you could flip it around and say, maybe he just cares so much he doesn't want this to fail. So how can I, instead of be defensive or combative back to him, how can I ask better questions to him that will help him provide more clarity in what he's actually trying to provide? Can I flip his sort of what may occur as negativity as he's just so passionate about this project working, he's just trying to catch all the sort of pitfalls before they come? And could I ask better questions of him that helps him feel like he's bringing value, and acknowledging like that's an important thing to look at, but also maybe challenging him to some of the positives.
So carrying on with that same vein, I mean, there are places that also provide chaos, right? It doesn't matter whether we're walking into work and we have other people that we need to deal with, or just the situation that we work in every day. I'm not saying it's a toxic situation. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that there's a lot going on. So it's not like we can put the same parameters around a place as we can a person. So how do we
Well,
deal with
true.
that?
So I think one, again, I would challenge to say, is that situation actually, or that environment actually chaotic, or is it just busy? Because is it confusing and disorderly? Maybe, but then it's on you to ask clarifying questions so it's not that. And so, and refocusing on the mission. Sometimes I'll come in, to an event or something and everything is going wrong. The tech doesn't work, or, like people are late to the meeting, or, people are dealing with crises as they're coming in. And yeah, that is a chaotic situation. But if we join into that chaos, if we start complaining about it or blaming others for why it's happening, then you contribute to the chaos. I had someone give an example the other day saying, like, well, think about like a daycare situation. Like a daycare is always chaos. And I said, well, I don't know if a daycare is always chaos, because I don't know if the people that work at the daycare center necessarily feel that way, because they're used to it. To them, it's all a matter of perspective. Now, if you and I walked into the daycare and started complaining about how they were running it, and we're blaming other people's children, and then that starts to create the chaos. So I don't necessarily think environments are chaotic unless you feed into it or make it chaotic by either complaining and blaming while you're in it. I say you go in, observe the situation. Can it be busy? Can it be confusing? Can it be disorderly? But that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. It just means we need to ask better questions and figure out, what are we actually trying to accomplish right now? What's the mission? What's the mission right now? What's the micro mission in this moment that I can create clarity on to move forward? And to me, then the environment isn't, I don't find it it's not necessarily chaotic in a negative way. It just is what it is.
It just is what it is. Exactly. So, I mean, from our concept, again, IT world, we walk into anything and it's always chaotic because nothing is ever going exactly. They wouldn't have called us if they were,
Right.
didn't have an issue. So then it's, well, is there a process? Is there a procedure? Is there something that can be applied to the situation to make it not chaotic and make it not out of control and make it not, to apply clarity to it so that there is not, and in this case, sometimes there is fear that surrounds it, like, oh, maybe I broke something, maybe I'm in trouble, that kind of thing. And it is providing that clarity of, no, things just sometimes go sideways, but here's the process and procedure to go along and fix
But
it.
Don, you're right on the money. It's always about that. I believe that clarity equals security. Think about, even just last week, I was on the airplane and the plane was delayed. And when you're on a flight and the plane is
Like,
delayed,
I can see there's so many different places this
right,
can go, and like clarity is like, if I'm on an airplane and we're in the air, there better be really good clarity.
okay, right. Well, and the air for sure. But say you're just sitting on the tarmac and you've been in that situation where everyone's just sitting there and no one gets on and tells you any information. And the time kind of keeps ticking. And even my mind starts to start thinking, I start getting a little frustrated. I'm getting a little bit like complainy in my mind. I'm kind of wanting to blame the airline or blame the flight attendant or blame the pilot and I'm kind of getting a little frustrated. But the minute that pilot comes on and he says, hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the delay. And I don't have an update yet. We're waiting for some information, but I'll check back in with you in 10 minutes. Even just that clarity, that he doesn't have clarity, but he's aware of that lack of clarity is making us feel insecure. I now feel more secure, and I can sort of breathe deep and go back to what I'm doing for the next 10 minutes until he checks back in with us again. I think that clarity equals security. It makes me feel safe. It makes people feel that they don't have to go into that avoiding, blaming, and complaining if they have clarity, even if the clarity is, I don't have any clarity yet, but I'm working on it. And here's the mission. The mission is, we're going to, try to get you out of here on time, or we'll make up the time in the air. Like, the mission is to get you to your location when we said we would, safely. Right. And so that's his mission. And if he reclarifies the mission and then helps us understand how they're going to get there. That's what you all are doing all the time in change management. It's not always your job to fix every single issue, because most of the time, most of the issues are being caused by people's reaction to the issue. It's never the crisis that's the problem. If you think about that, it's not the flood. It's not that attack on their security is the issue. It's the impact that it has. It's the damage to my floor in my basement that the flood caused. It's the security breach that customers are going to freak out about, or whatever. It's the impact. It's never the crisis. It's always the impact. And so the more that you can check in with people and gain clarity of what they feel the impact is of this situation, whatever it is, small, big, that's going to give you your golden ticket to have authentic conversations with customers, with employees. It's just having a human connection of what clarity do you need right now to feel safe.
That's a lot. But it's true. It's very true. And it follows through. I mean, we talked about people, we talked about places now, and then it follows right through with stuff is the same way, right? I think I've had a conversation with a couple folks in my industry not too long ago, and he actually had a screenshot the other day, and it was like 5,000 emails in his inbox, and I actually like died a little inside. Like, just
okay. I won't show you mine then, because I think let's see right now. Now it is a separate account. I have 92,000. Does that give you a heart attack?
It kind of does. Like little parts of my soul die.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
now,
how do you look at that and be like, I'm good?
Right, because I've already clarified that I know majority of those are coming from like accounts that I use for, ordering online and those kinds of things.
I'm physically twitching.
But see, that goes right back to our beginning of talking about our different relationships with chaos. That doesn't cause me anxiety at all, because I have clarity in myself of what I know and where they're coming from, right? But for someone like you, that's like, are you kidding me? How can you even see that?
How do you sleep at night?
Yeah, just fine.
You're like, yep, that's fine.
Absolutely fine. And I have an amazing team that makes sure I don't miss the ones that are really important.
Right.
Send me reminders.
Sure. And it's totally fine. But I think it is going back to that, like, what's good, what's bad, what do I need to care about, what do I not need to care about, right? And it is totally fine to set up rules on your mailbox and have things go to your trash, or have things go to your junk, or put them in different folders if they're just newsletters or whatever, and you'll get around to them whenever. 92,000 emails later, you'll get to them. Oh my gosh.
Now, Dawn, sometimes on the airplane, in those moments of the delays, when I have some clarity, I will spend a bunch of time unsubscribing from some of those emails so that it is a little more under control.
So I guess one of the things too that I think we all deal with, and we talked about this just a little bit, is like, how do you deal with other people's emergencies? Because so many times, right? And you talked about the flood in the floor in the basement, right? That's somebody else's emergency that somebody else gets stuck dealing with. Mm-hmm. But again, for the change management people in my world here, everybody that is calling me has an emergency of some variety or whatever, most of which has been created by them, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But they want somebody else to come now fix their sometimes inflated emergency, sometimes real emergency, depending on the situation. I mean, how do we give them clarity to understand that while I understand to you it feels like an emergency, your printer not printing, maybe not the biggest thing on the planet, right?
I think that's so interesting, because you're right. And you can imagine from my perspective, most emergencies that I hear also are very are challenging sometimes, because you're right. Most of these things aren't life and death. No one is going to die in this moment if this doesn't happen, but people's reaction sometimes is acting like that. And so I think, again, from the human side of it, it is just like you said, acknowledging that that's real. But the more that you can get connected and them connected to the actual impact of this emergency, it puts it more into perspective and you know what to work on next. Because again, it starts out up here in this big, scary, like emergency. And then as someone who, in de-escalation tactics, what you're trying to do is pull them in to this moment of what is the actual impact right now. If that printer not printing in this moment is the issue, what is that actually causing? Like helping bring people into the moment, bringing them into right here, right now. When I work in emergency in the field and emergency on the police department, the very first thing is, trying to even get someone just to make eye contact with me. Come be right here, right now with me. Like get them right here, right now. Calm down. Let's take a breath. And what's the actual mission? What are we trying to accomplish right now? Right? The big mission is the big mission. And that's where it's very overwhelming because you're not going to be able to accomplish that or solve that in the moment. You're pulling it into right here, right now, step by step. What actually needs to happen? What are you worried about? And the more you can authentically connect with your customers, with your people, with your family in the moment of a freak out and getting them into their own space of saying, hey, what are you feeling right now? Well, I'm feeling angry. I'm upset. I'm scared. I'm frustrated, whatever it may be. What is the actual impact of what's going on? What are you worried about? I use what are you worried about all the time and not in a passive aggressive tone. You got to be really mindful of how you're saying this. Authentically be curious with that person in front of you, even if as the person, knowing that they probably caused it, this could have been avoided, all this stuff, we have to put our judgment aside and be like, hey, they're in front of me right now as another human being that is having an emotional response to an event. So what can I do in this moment to help them feel safe and secure and provide some clarity? And maybe is even helping them see that, oh, this isn't actually that big of a deal. Like it actually is okay. Thanks for helping me see this and vent for a second and calm down because I see that this isn't life or death. And okay, now I'm ready to go into the step-by-step scenario. So it's getting them into that moment with you and truly authentically acknowledging that maybe for that person in front of you, it's the very first time anything really scary has ever happened or anything upsetting has ever happened. And as crazy as that sounds, we just have to remember that we deal with it so often. We're able to move so quickly from the reaction to the response. But most people stay stuck in the reaction. And it's our job to help them have some clarity so they feel safe to move to a response.
Which is funny, again, funny, haha, in this case, not funny, ironic, but it's more of I don't know how many phone calls I've gotten over the years of, so I clicked on this thing. Oh. And then, right?
And you just want to be like, why? I've told you a million times, don't do that, right? But you're like, oh, okay.
Right? And you're like, let's take a look. Let's see what we've clicked on, right? And it, and it's usually just some silly, screen that comes up and it's not really anything. But of course, they're completely losing their mind because
they think the whole
world
now, yeah,
right, right. And it's really, again, it's really funny to listen to them say, like, I don't know how I call you, I'm freaking out, and you're like, it's fine, we're just gonna walk through this and see what it looks like, and you're like, it's like the voice of reason is on the phone, and you're like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, I have software in place that's going to prevent anything truly bad from happening. So I know nothing bad has happened, but I'm going to let them be scared for just an extra couple of seconds because we have learned a lesson at this point because we are on the phone confessing, which is amazing, which is kind of fun. But
it is amazing. But Dawn, you just totally demonstrated, like in that moment, you provided clarity by reminding me if that was me, even though maybe I knew this or when I signed up with you or you provided that, I knew that's what you were going to do. But in that moment of my fear, you provided me some clarity and you reminded me that there is a system and process for this and we're going to be okay. But it still sucks. I mean, there is this like reality, and that's where it's okay to be human for a second and feel the fear, feel the frustration. But you're amazing at providing that clarity, and that's what you do, is help move people through that.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I did a thing. You're never going to get in trouble for telling the truth, no matter what it is, right? And the less time that we have to spend chasing our tails trying to figure out what it was that you did, the faster I can clean up whatever it was that you accidentally did. So, I look at it from that respect too. And, huge props to anybody that's willing to call up any of their vendors and say, hey, I did a thing. I'm sorry. Help me.
Right.
I'd much rather have that phone call than I can see something's going sideways. Now I have to figure out and backtrack who did it and, have 10 people lie to me along the way. And it's just, that's so miserable to try to deal with. And then, of course, then you have to go to the boss and say, well, here's who actually did it. I can see it through the logs. And they're like, oh, no, it wasn't me. Well, computers don't lie. So,
Right.
yeah, it's
And
just
that would
kind of
be
how it
really
works.
tough. And again,
It is.
if
It's
we can
miserable.
just, and as leaders, for anyone who's listening to this, who maybe has employees or people that would be ever afraid to be honest, I would look at your leadership style and your management styles and ask yourself, am I providing a safe place for people to make mistakes? Do people feel secure? Do they think they're going to lose their job? And maybe, so it's not saying that there aren't consequences for our actions and there aren't teachable moments, but I think remembering as leaders, it's so important to provide that clarity to our people that, you are in a safe place. Like, we are going to screw up and there is going to be an impact, but there's always a solution if we can, hone in on like the reason why it's happening and get it done faster.
Sure. And as leaders too, I think having the ability to take the time and say, hey, it's me, I'm the idiot this time,
Right.
is huge. It's really huge to say,
Definitely.
or I have no idea, show me,
Mhm.
because there's can't know everything. But yeah, you just can't. That's kind of how it goes. But being able to come back when you've made a mistake and say, hey, yep, I made the mistake. This one's on me. This is on my shoulders. I'm sorry. And here's what I'm going to do to rectify the situation, right? So take that moment as not only is it a teaching incident for yourself because you've learned something, but it also shows humility, but it also shows a little bit of humanity too. Because,
Absolutely.
because I would want them to treat me the same way that I would treat them.
For sure. And then it's always about refocusing on the mission. What are we actually here to accomplish? What are we trying to do? And the more you refocus on the mission in these times of chaos, you will always be able to reconnect to a solution focused mindset, because being focused on the mission doesn't allow you to stay in the grunt of the problem of why and who and this and that and the blaming and complaining. It's like, yes, that is, we do need to know who's accountable and responsible and why it's happening so it doesn't happen again. But just refocus on the mission. What are we actually trying to accomplish? And that's that solution focused mindset instead of just staying focused on the problem. So I always ask people, are you focused on the problem or the solution? You always want to be focused on the solution, not the problem, and let the problem be dealt with sort of at a different time. We got to focus on the solution.
So what I've heard in all of this, because I've been taking notes the entire time, because there's been some amazing little things that have come out through here, is that you always go back to the mission. Doesn't matter what's going on around you, always go back to the mission. You're going to find the clarity there for you and all of the people around you as well. So if you're the person leading that team, one, you have to go back to the mission, but provide clarity for everyone around you with what's going on. And that should kind of focus everybody back in if things are going even slightly off kilter. The other one was be in the moment and figure out where we need to go next, because that helps everybody to avoid the blaming, complaining, and avoiding process, right?
Yep. And Dawn, just in that, that's creating the micro mission, because the mission sometimes can be too big. So if people are overwhelmed, the mission is just too big. And what you just said, pulling it into the here and now, to me, I call that my micro missions, creating a start and an end, having something that you can actually accomplish right now that helps move you forward.
One of the other things that I really like that you said was that impact point, and it's different for every single person, right? What is the point of impact for each person? And then you have to understand what that is. Now, it might take some conversation to get there.
Yes.
But connecting with them and understanding what that impact point is for them.
Absolutely. What are they worried about? Remember, they want to feel safe. So people may be worried about that the project's too overwhelming and they can't leave on time and they coach their son's baseball team, and you just never know. And just have authentic conversations. Never have I said it's your job to solve everyone's problem. It's your job to help gain clarity so that we all have clarity on what we're worried about and what mission we're trying to accomplish.
Right. And I think some of that too is coming back and saying, hey, what are you worried about, right? Because that can come off a little weird.
Yes.
But if you're saying, hey, I'm seeing that there's a point of impact for you that is not helping your mindset. What is that? Right?
I love the point of impact. I wrote that down actually because it's true. It is, what is the point of impact on you or on the project? Or maybe it's they're worried about the point of impact on their team. Maybe the expectations are occurring as unrealistic, or they're worried that their team can't make the deadline or the, whatever may be. So I love that idea of the point of impact, getting curious about that.
And then the other big one was that providing clarity for those that are on groups, committees, so that you're all getting the same value out of that. I'm going to call it work order, but it's more a matter of, if you're stuck with a bunch of people that maybe you share values with, maybe you don't, understanding, what the agenda is, what the value proposition is for all of us together, and making sure that it's very clear before you start down the road of trying to do a thing as a group. Yeah. Because if you don't have that, you're going to have Bob.
Totally. And if you don't know what it is, you might want to ask, because you can't tell people what it is for each other. And I think letting people share, what are they excited about, or what are they hoping to accomplish in this committee? What are their biggest threats or challenges that they see? Let people share their perspectives, sometimes before you even jump in with the actual mission that you're trying to accomplish, so that you're on the same page of different perspectives.
Did I miss anything?
Oh my gosh, no, this is such an interesting conversation. I love looking at it through this perspective as well.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out for a while, Corinne. I can't tell you, I think, like I said, I've gotten a lot out of this, especially from those specific points. The groups and committees things is huge for me, but that point of impact, I think, was the biggest takeaway as well, and just the way that you talk to people.
Yeah, same. Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate you and what you provide for your community and for the world. And you're always providing clarity that helps people feel safe. And I think that that's how we continue to just keep moving all of our missions forward. So thank you. Thank you for this time.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to Rebel Executives with Dawn Sizer, the podcast that gives you an edge over traditional business thinking and helps grow your business without making costly mistakes. You can join the other rebels taking the steps to become more effective leaders at rebelexecutives.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, long live the revolution. The revolution.